My sister has asked me to make her a 6 foot wide by roughly 3 foot tall wall hanging of the state of Kentucky. I decided to make this out of pallet boards because I had a number of pallets in the shop. I went ahead and disassembled them and I laid the slats out. I'm a little over 6 foot, but that's okay because we're going to end up jointing these boards so that we can glue everything together. And that's what we're going to start today. We're going to get all of these jointed up, and then we're going to cut the other edge on the table saw so that everything is nice and square, and we're going to begin gluing these sections up. My plan is to make 3 2-foot sections that will be screwed together when they're ready to be hung. That way transporting a 6 foot state of Kentucky in my car is not really feasible. So if I make 3 2-foot sections that we can just screw together on a French cleat possibly, and then hang directly on the wall, I think that's going to make the most sense. So where we need to start now is, let's get all these boards jointed and ready to glue. I got all my boards jointed, and now what I want to do is clean up the other edge here on the table saw. All of the wood for this project has now been jointed on one side, and I ran it through the table saw to clean up the other side. It's ready to be glued together. Before I glue it together, I'm going to go ahead and run it through my planer, both sides, just to clean them up. I don't plan on sanding this. I'm going to leave it rough / rustic, I guess you might call it. But right now, the rough cut wood is just a little too rough, so we're going to take care of that. I'm over in the big garage, and I apologize for the lighting. It's nowhere near as bright as the shop is, but I do have all my boards laid out on the table here. And what I have in front of me is the pattern that my sister provided. And what I want to do is, there's a lot of excess paper here that I'm not going to need. I just want to take my scissors and lop that off to make this pattern, number one, more manageable. And number two, this pallet wood, there's a lot of blemishes and cracks in the wood. And I want to make sure that I can slide these boards, in and out to get the best possible piece of wood under the pattern. At that point, once I get everything adjusted the way I like it, I can draw a straight line. I can take my chop saw, cut all the wood, roughly to length. Then we'll get it glued up, we'll get the pattern attached, and we'll cut it out with the jigsaw. I've got everything laid out, and you can see I've made some marks on the boards. This is just my bottom line so I can line all of my boards back up once I get them trimmed. Up at the top, you'll notice I've got some lines drawn where I can just hack some pieces off to make the entire thing a little more manageable. I have gone back and forth underneath of the pattern and made sure that the splits are all below it. This material will eventually be removed. You'll notice I've made some registration marks every 3 boards, so that what I'm going to do is, and the boards are also numbered, so what I'm going to do is take these boards one at a time into the shop, and on the chop saw I'm going to cut, I'll cut this section off, but the bottom I'll leave alone. I'm going to cut the top section off and bring them back out, and that'll make my glue ups much easier because I'll be dealing with smaller boards. I am a little shy on the end. I've got this board, but it's got a bad warp in it, and I figured some of these sections up here are going to be long enough to where I'll be able to make them up right here. I need about 2 more boards and should be able to make that work. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm going to get these boards shortened and then we'll start gluing them together. I've got all of the excess material cut off of my boards, and what I'm ready to do now is start my glue up. What I want to do is I want to glue this up in 3 2-foot sections. So if we take a quick peek at this, we're looking at right about here, right about here, and then that should be about 24, yeah, that's 24 3/4 inches. So that's perfect. So what I'm going to do is get my glue, we're going to get our table covered to protect it, and I'm going to go ahead and get these 3 sections glued up and get that glue drying so we're ready to move on to the next step. I just finished my first 2-foot section glue up. The discolorations you see, that's dampness from a wet rag that I used to wipe glue squeeze out off of the top of the boards. I'm going to let this set for about a half an hour so that I know it's good and glued together. Then we'll take it apart and we'll begin making our second glue up. By cutting this board in half at a 45-degree angle, we've created a perfect French cleat to be able to hang our sign on the wall. Cutting this out with a bandsaw proved to be a nightmare. There's just so much vibration because the 3 sections can somewhat move independently of one another. I mean, they are bolted to the French cleat, but there's still a tiny bit of movement. That vibration is transferring into the ends of the wood, and it's just making it impossible to cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my knife and I'm just basically scoring the wood and cutting out the pattern. And then what I'll do is I'll disconnect these 3 sections from one another and I'll take them to the scroll saw. That way this can lay flat on the table and I'll be able to just run it through the scroll saw and cut this out, and I'll get a much cleaner and a much nicer cut. It'll take a little bit longer, but it's going to be a lot better because the jigsaw just wasn't working. I've got the stake cut out. All that's left to do is to get the French cleat and the spacer reattached to the back of it. A little bit of cleanup work, you know, just a light sanding around the edges where there might be a little fuzz, and then we'll be ready to apply a finish. I've got all 3 pieces of my State of Kentucky attached to the French cleat and the spacer. I've sanded them down. I did way more sanding than I thought I would have to do. I filed and rounded the edges over. I have one little split right here where this piece of wood came loose. I've got it, you can see I've got a piece under it to kind of brace it. I'm going to go ahead and put the Danish oil on it and you know, get the finish on it and drying. And when it's finally dry, I'll come back and glue that up. And the reason being is I need to deliver this. This is Tuesday, and Friday I need to take it to Kentucky. So I don't want to have it be damp or smelly while I'm driving in the car. So I'm trying to give it as much time to dry as possible, and then you know, I can glue it up. The glue won't be a big deal. It doesn't stink. What I'm going to do is use a little bit of natural colored Watco Danish oil. I happen to have this in the shop. I went to buy some boiled linseed oil, and my big box store doesn't carry it anymore. They want you to order it online and have it shipped to the store. I'm just going to use a foam brush. I'll pour a little bit in this container, and I'm just going to basically paint it on. That's really going to be beautiful. I'm going to turn the camera off now and finish this, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I'm done. Here's a quick shot of the Kentucky wall hanging after getting a full coat of Danish oil on it. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. Once it dries, we'll get the tip of the stake glued up, and it's ready to be delivered. I'm very happy to report that the pallet wood wall hanging of the state of Kentucky is finally finished. This is not a normal project for me. This was a special request from my sister, and I've got it on the table saw behind me. I just finished applying the Danish oil, and the Danish oil is drying. Let me tip this down just a little bit, and you can kind of see in the background. Once it's completely dry, I will go ahead and take a better photo of it, and I'll put that at the end of the video so you can see it. I would really like to thank you for following along with me on this project. I know it's not a normal project of mine, but it was something that I really was interested in doing. I had a great time doing it, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I want to thank you for joining me in the shop. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. You come back and see me again real soon, and have a wonderful evening.